Should we consider arranged marriages in rebuilding black families, or is it too strange of an idea to practice? This came with a video. Let's check.
Would wash away arranged marriages? Would you say it should be done with?
No, not at all. It works for people. It works a lot of people. Sometimes I'm jealous of my sister. I have to be honest with you. She has a 15,000 square foot house, a private plane, and a dead mother-in-law. What did I do to my life? I built my own.
Yeah, that's matchmaking. His mom is pretty sickly.
Do you know what I got for Valentine's Day? A Metro card.
If you could wash away arranged marriages, would you say it should be done with?
No, not at all. It works for people. It works a lot of people. Sometimes I'm jealous of my sister. I have to be honest with you. She has a 15,000 square foot house, a private plane, and a dead mother-in-law. What did I do to my life? I built my own.
Yeah, that's matchmaking. His mom is pretty sickly.
Do you know what I got for Valentine's Day? A Metro card.
I wanted to play it twice. Just make sure everyone got the gist of it. So, based on what we're hearing here, now it's kind of tongue in cheek. The video was, but should we consider arranged marriages in rebuilding black families, or is it too strange an idea or practice? Kevin Carre, what say you? All right, Kevin Carre.
I'm sorry. That's a thing, but I think if you want to introduce that, you got to introduce it slow. My problem with arranged marriages, you're not given, people. I'm thinking about people born over here or been over here a while. People are used to choosing their own partner. If you're arranging something, a lot of people are not going to get along. If you're not getting along, if the bed's not quaking, well, your population's not going to be rising. But I'll pass the mic.
Let's see if we could get Oni for 1 minute here. Oni, go ahead.
Oh, about arranged marriages? Should we consider arranged marriages? I mean, you should do whatever you want in your family. If I want my son to mess with a woman, like I could do it myself. But if you don't, you don't. I mean, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't get the whole, giving relationship advice or giving marital advice to people who ain't even asking, or people who ain't even listening to you. You know what I mean? If nobody listening to you, why are you giving out advice? You know what I'm saying? I could do it for my son. I saw this back when I was in Ghana. I saw this little girl who I was like, yo, my son should probably wife that lady, right? But that's it. And I could set it up, but oh, that's it. I'm just 1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a neat thought when we talk about being organized and having organizations and having what's it that Bakari brings up, the code of conduct. And I think it's an interesting thing to have some kind of consensus on it, especially if we're trying to engineer our future, our culture, and whatnot. You know what I mean? So I think it's an interesting question. Gas, what say you?
Well, I look at it like this. Historically, this idea of romantic love is a recent invention. People didn't get married for romance. That can be traced back to the troubadours. Even the idea of fidelity or faithfulness, right? I tell women all the time, cheating. And I'm like, well, cheating implies that we're playing a game. Is that why it's called a courtship? Right? So marriage and relationships are not a game to be played. This is where lineages are tied together. This is where DNA is shared. This is where genetics are put together. This is where land, assets, wealth are combined. And historically, when you look at the origin of romantic entanglements, the way that we see them in the so-called modern day, people often thought there was a form of madness, eros, and you think about this psycho shooting you in the heart, and driving you insane. They saw that as a form of madness. I mean, Romeo and Juliet makes sense. These two families have been beefing for generations. Why are you falling in love? Slap Juliet upside her head and let her marry the guy that she's supposed to marry. And tell Romeo, mind your business and stop looking at my daughter. We don't like each other. We oil and water. We don't mix. But in this Western sense, in these Roman antics, right? I know everyone thinks I defend the Romans, right? But with romance or Roman antics, as I jokingly call it,
You do.
of course I don't. But the point is that with romance, the women are brainwashed and told, "Oh, it's such a beautiful story," Romeo and Juliet, and it's bullshit. It's a crappy story. It's a story of a girl and a boy who are disobedient to their parents. They should get the crap beat out of them. They should be ostracized. The ramifications of what they're doing is problematic. Because now, okay, you got a kid. So what? Just because you got a kid, love is going to conquer all? And I'm supposed to ignore the fact that these people on that side killed my cousin and killed 5 of my uncles and stuff like that and vice versa? You're going to shoot that kid in the head, get him out the way, and go back to beefing, right? So I think I like always going into the history of these things. And when we go into the history, then I think we can start charting the course to how we maneuver ourselves within this thing called modernity. So for me, I think arranged marriages should be the norm across the board. But in particularly for Black people in America, there's a saying, right? Oh, I ain't got to do nothing but stay black and die. And I think that's the problem. That mentality has to be thrown in the trash can and never brought back. You got to listen to the family. The family has to be controlled by people who are upstanding, righteous, that aren't going to compromise, right? So it's going to be difficult to do, right? When we see examples of like R. Kelly's sister was molesting him and the brother. Michael Jordan's older sister was raped by his father. So there's a lot of things that have to be fixed in the families first, where there's discipline and structure and no one is abusing anything. And then I think once that's taken care of and all the bad seeds are rooted out, I think arranged marriage is the best way to go, in my opinion. But, I'll stop talking there.
Yeah. I think we have to discuss these things. Randomly, no. I think we got to get together and decide what we want to, how we want to construct our futures, similar to what Gas was saying just now. Brother Bakari, what say you? Bakari, you muted if you're speaking. All right, maybe.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Simple put, yep, I think arranged marriages would be good and it could help build arranged marriages, shit, polygamy. But I'm just saying, but we're just talking about arranged marriages. Yes, I believe arranged marriages. Because when you arrange a marriage and you meet someone, let's say hypothetically, because I know when Oni said he could do that himself for his son, and he's right. But I think the way I'm taking the question is like, should arranged marriages be like a part of our culture? You understand? Is that's how I'm taking it. So yes, if arranged marriages are part of your culture, yes, arranged marriages can help build a community. Because if we're arranging a marriage, my son who's going to school to be an attorney, he's going to meet someone doing something similar. My daughter, y'all, you understand what I'm saying? Y'all kids. So that way, not only will we be building, or you could be building something, or someone that's a business owner. You understand? Not necessarily just because they go to college. They might just be. You understand? You're gonna arrange with somebody respectful, because that's what you want. Marry the family, and everything continues. You understand? So I had to get away and want nobody to think just because I'm saying, "Ooh, a lawyer." Yeah, but no, it could be a construction worker. But as long as he's out there and he got his own, you know, he's doing his thing. So we can arrange that. You feel me? A great, yeah, and there would be nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. And on that note, man, I got to bounce. I just got a call. I got to bounce. I'm gonna be
all right,
listening.
sir. I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you joining us tonight, Bakari. You guys make sure to check out Brother Bakari.
Thank you for letting me speak, man. Everybody on the panel, peace.
Peace. In the chat, Trick Happy 262 was saying some stuff. He says, I think it should be both, either arranged marriage or more stronger and elaborate forms of courtship. The problem with courtship now is that you are not given the rules to be able to win. You have to be socialized in a way where you can be able to navigate dating. Things like beauty, finance, and what not are important. Basically, how you build good men and women is important. He says also infidelity and fidelity existed in the ancient world. While the West may have particular ideas of romance, this idea that people didn't value cheating and we were just static is not true. Bobby Wright says, I don't think Africans in America have that level of understanding. We have too much of a Western mindset. I agree with Bobby right there. Trigapi 262 says, and I say this because my own ethnic group has systems dealing with infidelity and fidelity. Real Black Gentleman in the chat said, I hate that phrase, stay black and die. Real Black Gentleman, what's your thoughts on this whole prompt tonight?
Yeah, I do think that the idea of arranged marriages do work, but again, the whole idea of marriage itself has to be, you kind of have to crystallize it. I think the idea of getting married, hence now forevermore, maybe we need to like slow down on that and maybe like have like marriage contracts where it's going like 1 year, 2 year, 5 year contracts. Then with family building, we can go with like 10-year, 15-year, 20-year contracts where we're not necessarily. And then if we truly commit to each other, because a marriage, I mean, marriage is supposed to be between you, God, and the people. We are getting married. It's not like I'm going off into some corner and getting that. Again, that's some like weak sauce marriage. If you're going to get married, you're going to get married in front of the people. You, God, and everyone is going to know that you two are a union. That's how it's supposed to be. But if you get together and you don't want to get together, then you don't want to be arranged bad and be stuck, and you don't want to be forced to have kids too soon. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to. A woman shouldn't just. That's terrible. I mean, it's like you're arranged with a terrible man, and that he's no good. He has no structure. This is nothing good can come of that. So the idea can be looked at, but on a surface level. There's more to the idea of marriage, and then we still have to break down. You know what I'm saying? Just a lot of just functionality and making sure that we're actually partners in a family unit, because we have to redefine what the male and female role are in that marital union, in that nucleus of the family, because the man and the woman is the nucleus and the kids are the electrons that spin around them. You know what I'm saying? So we got to make sure that nuclear binding force is strong. Otherwise, the atom will split the family. Just making sure that if you do have arranged marriages, that you do, especially if the couple is young, you don't want to force young people to get married. Although, in a sense, you know, on the flip side, if you're younger, you might not be predisposed to being just just having your own peculiarities and unable to mesh with the other person. I think that it is. You do want to allow a degree of like, maybe we should have like petty marriages before you get to genuine marriage, as it were. You want to encourage strong youthful bonds that can be lifelong. You do. I mean, I think that ultimately that is ideal for many multiple reasons. Health. I mean, just being with an older partner in older years is better than being alone. These are the long-term things you want to have. If we're talking about nation building, we want to have couples and couples and couples. You know what I'm saying? With kids, and we have to. The dynamics have to be incredible. and we have to see one aspect of the dynamic and move around to the other side of the room and see the other side of the dynamics that are going on. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to flesh out. You have to mindfully, methodologically think these things through, allow for trial and error with degrees of tolerance, you know, and yeah, I again, not everyone should be forced to, but again, if you're going to do it, you do have to kind of find a place that is willing to, it already has a strong marriage culture. It's the only way it works. You have to find that seed and build off of it. I do want black men and black women to be together. I want black men and black women to want to stay together, not just because to have a sum greater than themselves as a part of greater blackness. And the only way to do that is to have a culture where black men and black women are seen at a young age to get together, not in the Indian style or wherever culture, but we can truly be unique and really, I mean, that will be another strong catalyst, because if you can get the man and woman just to stick together and just have, that's what I'm talking about, binding agents, you know, binding structures in society. Marriage is one of them. You know what I'm saying? Once you have the nucleus of the family, you build electrons, your children. You can have 8, 9, you know, this goes back to big families. Once you have big families, you have young people who are out there being productive, and there are just many people, many hands and many minds putting in like work that you can get there from here. Hopefully I say what I had to say.
Yeah, let's hear from Oni real quick. He wanted me to double back to him. Go ahead, Oni.
Yeah. So I think there may be a misunderstanding about what arranged marriages are, but it's more like let's say my son at 7 and a little girl at 5. You know, me and parents, the kid's parents, get together and say, oh, so when this little girl turns 16 or this little girl turns 18 or whatever, then she's gonna marry my son, you know, when he's 20. And that's it. Now, I think that because we as Black adults don't even make good relationship decisions, it's almost like we're not even at the stage where we can make good relationship decisions for, you know, toddlers. You know what I mean? So I mean, yeah, I mean, in some capacity, it's a good idea, but realistically, I don't think any of us are even concerned about. I mean, like we're not really in the economic or social or psychological position to be arranging marriages for toddlers. You know, I think cultures do it because they have established families and established lineages and blah blah blah, and you know, communities with wealth and this and that, so forth. But if you don't have that stuff, then like, you know, you're looking at the wrong. I don't think you're looking at the right solution.
I hear what Oni's saying, and I agree with most of it. I will say this though, and I talked about this on Shoot the Breeze a couple of weeks back. In America, in the West, the Black equals African folks in the West don't have those established families and lineages. As a matter of fact, I could be, you know, it's different than say in the continent. You go to date an African woman who's still heavily connected to the continent. One of the things that frustrates them, and I had to learn this, is when you don't start to inquire about their tribes and whatnot, because they have that. And I had to tell a lady this one time, like, to be honest with you, like in the Caribbean, we didn't have that. We didn't have, you know, these tribes and these tribal systems that we talk about. And we could spend, you know, 5 hours just talking about our tribe and the great men and women of our tribe. We didn't have that. So I think this prompt has a little bit of a continental swing to it, not just because of who posted it, but because in the continent, like you just alluded to, there is that family thing. And so, yeah, people would engage in the arranged marriages because they understand that family lineage thing. Yes, am I correct about that?
Yes, you're very correct about that. But go ahead, I'm listening because I wanted to comment when you're done.
No, well, I was pretty much done, but yeah, I had to learn that the hard way. I had to learn that when I saw a woman get frustrated, we're like, well, how come you not ask me about my tribe? And I'm like, tribe? You know what I mean? So I came to realize that the way we see some things out here, we don't have the connection to the concepts. Gas, you go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. Brother Bakari, shout out to him. He brought up a point about the dollar princesses, right? That was something that this is when Americans were using, old money was basically bribing. I'm sorry, new money was bribing old money to get back in. So the mother of Winston Churchill, her father was a rich American upstart, and Winston's father, on his father's side, was old British royalty, and his mother's side was, American new money. So they were able to come together. I will say this: it's very interesting. Perhaps not so much in America. I think it'd be very difficult to achieve arranged marriages in America. But I think on some levels, on certain family levels, it can still happen. Because I know some men who have a lot of control over their families. But what's interesting is that those American women who did go abroad to marry the British aristocracy, they eventually had to abandon their American culture and fit into the British way, right? The American way had to give into the British way. And so for me, I'm not a fan of continuing, something that's not, or that doesn't seem to be working. I don't think it makes sense for people to continue along a trajectory that, the relationships aren't working out, the marriages aren't lasting, and no one is saying that arranged marriages are a cakewalk or heaven on earth. But I will say this: I think it ultimately boils down to training and orientation for arranged marriages. Even though it's changing on the continent, I say it all the time. You watch Netflix, all these Nigerian films that they're showing, they're putting all kind of nonsense in there. I remember I met someone recently, an African American lady. This was last week, and she was talking about jollof rice, and I was just assuming, I was like, she probably just watches Afrobeats. But come to find out, she had actually she was an exchange student in Nigeria. So she was like, yeah, and she was talking about NEPA and things that in Nigeria. And oh my God, wow. So, we had a great conversation. And she was like, it was very tough for her to make adjustments and that orientation, because there are certain things that, are expected of a at that time. Like I said, it's changing. Everybody throwing away their culture to be, Western. But at that time, there were certain cultural expectations and behavioral expectations that, a young woman is expected to be doing in preparation before she's in her husband's house, and vice versa. The things that a young man is expected to be doing in preparation to take care of his wife. And I think that has to be put in place before you can get to the point of arranged marriages and lineages and things like that, because there has to be roles and there has to be structures. It may not be rigid roles, but there have to be roles and structures that people will adhere to when they're in a marriage. But also, last thing, Trigger Happy, I think he said something that about cheating. Look, Trigger, please, if you make an assertion, got to put the evidence. I would like to see the discourse where, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but please put the evidence where people are having a discourse where they're punishing, men for so-called cheating or infidelity. Now, women, that's a different, topic, because women have always been the protected sex in that aspect. Women historically have not had the opportunity to, be loose, for the lack of a better term, like Amber Rose or slut walk and all that stuff. Women were always seen as protected. No, you shouldn't be out there sleeping around. But I would like to see the evidence where there's a group of people where they have a discourse punishing men, even in the West, right? You look at powerful men, they've always had things outside, right? You know, look at. I'll end with this state sentence. Bill Clinton had Monica Lewinsky, and he was villainized. You think anybody would villainize Genghis Khan or Shaka Zulu for having women outside? You know, so I'm just not a fan of copying things from the West, but I'll stop there.
All right. With that said, D Webb has been waiting for a minute. D Webb, what say you?
Yeah, I'll be extremely brief. To the topic, yes, I do agree. I do think that that arranged marriages should be a thing. Actually, I'd even go far as say polygamy should be a thing, to be honest with you. Because when you're losing, you're behind in a race. I think you need to breed your best and your brightest. You know, as dystopian that may sound, but if you're losing the race, you know, why are you having your worst of your worst? You know, produce, and they're probably actually producing more.
Yep.
But this
Yep.
whole marriage for love, I think Gas hit it up earlier. It's a modern concept, and it's failing. You can see that it's failing in the West, where 50% of marriages end in divorce. That to me is a failure. When half the marriages end in divorce, I think it's asinine to expect a 20-something-year-old to go out there and figure out the idea of finding a good partner on their own. That to me is like the most insane concept. You have people say it's insane to arrange marriages. I think it's insane to expect somebody who has zero life experience to go out there and find the right person for them, particularly when you involve sex, which we know the West is very sex heavy, you know, sex sales over here. So these people are caught in the lust and they're 20-some years old and they're out in the club trying to find their life partner. That to me is a recipe for failure. Yeah, so you know, I do think I forgot who said it earlier. In the West, you're gonna have to, because of the way the climate is here, you're gonna have to integrate it slowly. Maybe provide options as a family, or maybe have a system where, you know, a parent has to agree to sign off on the marriage or some of that sort. You do have to kind of ease people into it, just because this whole women empowerment, feminist mindset that the West kind of, you know, has been adhered to. But yeah, I think it's asinine. And I disagree a little bit with Oni earlier, where he was saying that the West doesn't have Black Americans or whatever, don't have really the structure to do the arranged marriages. It's like India, they do it, and then some of them are dirt poor. You know what I'm saying? You do recognize who has a good family structure, who comes from a good family, and those people, you have people who can trace their lineage back pretty far here. And you know a good family from a bad family, particularly in smaller areas where it may be a little harder in bigger areas, urban areas to do it. But
yeah,
you
that's
know,
what I was referring to. Yeah, it's probably harder in bigger areas, but in smaller parts, you probably do understand those lineages better in America than say the Caribbean. Even go ahead.
There you go. But yeah, that was it. That's all I had, man. So you wrapped it up for me. So that's all I got.
Yeah. With that said, let's hear from Marcus Garvey is the way.
I agree with the gentleman before. I think arranged marriages and polygamy is something that should be embraced by the Black community. But in terms of arranged marriages, you know, we have to be realistic that it doesn't lead to happier marriages. You know, I've witnessed when I first came here a lot of Asians, especially who were coming from India, especially, and other places like Bangalore, and all them other places, who came here to escape arranged marriages. What a lot of the Indians were doing were coming with their other partner that they wanted to get married to, but the family wouldn't agree with because they might have been from different castes. So a lot of them would come here, get jobs, and then be with the person away from their parents and away from their families, and have their relationships. And I've seen a couple of them get married. Some of the families, you know, eventually allow them to get married. One or two got married behind their families' backs. So those are people who were born within that system, but you know, a younger generation who wanted to get away from that. Again, like my husband, for example, he did not agree with his family's idea of arranged marriage, because he said because his father was the oldest, his father was in charge of arranging the marriages for most of the family members outside of his kids. So his father also had to arrange marriages for his own sister, which would have been my husband's aunts. And he said that he just saw them not being able to choose the right people for their in their arranged marriages. He didn't see his parents choosing correct people. So he just saw them just making a whole bunch of unhappy marriages, and he didn't want that for himself. So there is no hard and fast rule that arranged marriages are going to solve the issue. But in terms of securing family and making better decisions, especially in this horror culture of America and this thought culture and this gender warring that you're seeing, I think after the gender warring and that slut walk and all that stuff, you might need arranged marriages to bring these this next generation back on a straight and narrow, because between the STDs and loose boom booms and poom pooms, I don't know what is going to be left for the generation that follows. So arranged marriages could be the solution, but when you have a generation who want to tell you that a man in a wig is a woman, I don't think they'll make it seem that they'll make arranged marriages seem too far-fetched. But a man in a wig will be a woman, but arranged marriage would be too far out there. So it's a good idea between us talking, but bring it to the wider society, I don't think they'll agree.
I thank you for that. In the chat, Trigger Happy 262 says, for everyone saying it's a modern concept, I mean, I agree if we're talking Europe, but that's why I mentioned early industrialization. Like people are like people arranged marriage because of land, because they are agrarian societies. He says we in the modern age need to industrialize. As you industrialize, you have new forms of income and are not attached to the land. Yeah, I think we tend to kill ideas before we even try it. And I think we gotta, this is why if we're gonna talk about getting organized, these are some of the things we need to be talking about when organizing. You know what I mean? What is there an advantage? What's the route if we're gonna use polygamy, if we're gonna use arranged marriages, because we want to ensure that our women are protected and match with a man and prospering and all this type of stuff. We have to talk about these things. We have to discuss these things beforehand. If there's no last words,
let me add. I want to add. I guess quickly. It's kind of like what Marcus Garvey DeWayne was saying, in the sense of, the culture switch that's going on in America is so rapid and so out of our control that you can't predict it even like 5 years. So like the idea that you could predict a good child 10, 20 years in advance, I think it's a thing. I mean, I get that there's because I wouldn't blame all the Black folks' problems on bad families, as a sense that, I mean, I know people don't like Stacey Abrams, for instance, but was Stacey Abrams from a bad family? Was she from a ghetto family or whatever? Or was she from a family that if she were a young girl, you would be like, hey, I want my son to marry her. But then she comes out big and, and whatever it is, right? Is that like you can't necessarily predict in advance. Now, if you, whereas I say that the other people, like you say, like what D-Web was saying about India and so on and so forth, even though they poor and shit, right? The reality is that their culture, they have their own school system. They have their own culture, traditions that are on lock, on point, on bar, right? Whereas for us in America, particularly, because we letting these other folk educate us and miseducate us, it could be that you arrange it.
Yeah, those responses have to be a minute, my guy. You cut out again. Yeah, Trigger Happy 262 says the culture of arranged marriage. I'm sorry, he had a couple things. He said, I mean, I'm trying to be realistic too. This isn't something people are used to anymore. Like people want to do the whole find someone to love. So how do you introduce to people the culture of arranged marriage? Again, we say we are realistic, but are we? That's why I say do both. But the aspect of arrange should be through recommendation. And this other thing too, you don't have to arrange a marriage between two small children. That's another thing too. I mean, we're calling it arranged marriage. You don't have to go by the rules of the Indians or whoever was doing it before, or our own people who was doing it before with children. This could be a more, instead of arranged marriage per se, this could be more of a courtship thing, you know, and we arrange, you know, these courtship outcomes or something of that nature. So I think it's something that instead of us, and again, this is something I want people to come away from with Shoot the Breeze. Instead of us shitting on an idea at the drop of the thought, I think what we should do is have discussions about, well, going down the road of that thinking, what can be the outcomes that are beneficial to us? I think that's how we need to think about things more than that. Only you had cut out there, but I
I'll just say it's only Tanzania.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah. All right. What I would say is that we should focus on grooming our kids, like preparing our kids for marriage. I think that's what white folk, particularly in America, do, is that they prepare their children to be married to good folk. That's what I think would be a more likely solution than, you know, saying, yo, you marry this kid, but then, like, especially since we let in the public school system still.
We almost had it, huh? Yeah. So yeah, I think.
No, I was done.
Oh, okay. Trigger Happy 262 says, yeah, like familiarizing them from young and see where it heads. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We have to. We can't be so rigid where we have to do it like the fucking Brahmins did it.
But Coco, what does Trigger Happy mean that we have to industrialize? The world is already industrialized. Like, I'm not sure what people.
I know you.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't understand what he was saying. I'm just saying I didn't understand what they're saying. Look, no one's saying that arranged marriage is perfect, or that everyone should, tomorrow grab your kid, go down to East New York and pick a family and say, hey, your daughter and my son, 15 years from now, spit on each other's hand and shake. No one's saying that. It's I think it's about creating the idea, putting it down like a blueprint or a map, right? Or key to success or keys to success for where they want the community to be. And arranged marriage, because of how things have been broken down, it might not, include marrying children from birth, right? It might include, for example, there might be a single mother who, for whatever reason, needs a husband, and we got to get her a marriage. So, hey, listen, what can we do? Now, that's not going to work. Some women just, they're just too far gone. Some men are just too far gone. But if we're talking about communal control, I think this is the problem, and this is what the West invented, is that they really invented this idea of the individual effort, right? And the individual effort, this irrational singularity, is what allows people to have so-called newfound freedoms. But as I always say, freedom is not free. The cost of freedom is very, very expensive. So, to just basically not, put things in place ahead of time and have the structures in place, and more importantly, you have to groom, and I think that's why they did it at an early age, right? They did it at an early age, and just my opinion. I have done research on it, but I don't want to speak on it. I'm just saying my opinion. I think it was done at an early age because they conditioned the children to behave a certain way so that when they met each other in adulthood, they were complementary. So the young boys were socialized and conditioned to behave a certain way. So regardless of any young man you pick, 9 out of 10 times, he would even, they wouldn't play the same way, but he would do certain general things that were complementary to the general things that the young lady would do, and it made a marriage, work. And keep in mind, marriage was not just for sex or sexual gratification. or the person's happiness. Marriage is DNA, it's genetics, it's land, it's property, it's business, it's the intertwining of lineages. And you have to be very, very specific and careful whose lineage you intertwine with. These are things that the ancients understood. That's why that's why Marxism fails, because Marx forgets that blood is thicker than water. You're more likely to share something with someone that you have relations with than you are with a complete stranger, typically. And as for Trigger Happy, he's saying, is Africa industrialized? Of course, Africa is industrialized. What are we saying? There are industries in Africa. Africa is industrialized. Maybe not to the degree that you guys would like, but Africa has industries. If Africa is industrialized, how is Dangote in existence? Patrice Motsepe. But I'll stop there.
I appreciate that, Gas.
Let me just add. I'll just add quickly, I guess. Oh, okay.
I know. Oni, go ahead. You'll get the last word before I go to shoot the breeze topic number 7. Go ahead. One minute.
I was just going to say the reason why I was talking about the Indian system is because the lady.
Yeah, you cut out there, Oni. You cut out. All right. I think that was a good discussion. Again, I think these are the type of the subject areas is where these are the kind of discussions I want to have, and I'd like for more of you in the chat to hop on sometimes. Yeah, Oni, F that. I'm sorry about that. Hop on sometimes. Let's have more robust discussions. Again, if I have to cut down Shoot the Breeze to 5 subjects, but we can have real good conversations on the 5. That's better than just doing a random 10 or whatever. But let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 7.